Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I made this. It's a kitchen table that also serves as an island, and let's see how I did it. I started off by ripping wood for the legs to their final width. As you can see in the bottom right corner, there is a graphic that shows which part of the table I am currently working on. The blue part highlights the pieces that are being worked on. After that, I cross-cut the side pieces. You can see how I have a small piece of wood clamped to the fence in one shot. This allows for the wood to not get pinched between the blade and the fence. I will eventually make a cross-cut sled for these types of cuts, but I temporarily put some tape on the miter gauge to make sure that it was sturdy enough for these cuts. When ripping the shelves down to size, you can see tape being used to help prevent tear out where the blade is cutting. The same is being done on the tabletop as well. Right now I am cutting the part where the legs will attach to the shelves. I could do this type of cut on a bandsaw or other types of saws, but my Japanese pole saw does a good job in doing straight cuts with a small kerf. Kerf is essentially how thick the blade is, and a smaller kerf allows for better accuracy generally. Since a lot of the joints have end grain being glued, I decided to reinforce them with dowel rods. End grain generally glues up weaker, and I want this table to be sturdy. The dowel rods will also offer an aesthetic touch that I like. After cutting and drilling all the wood, I could start the glue-up process. Since I don't own enough clamps to do the whole table at once, I had to do it in stages. With this style of table, I would imagine gluing up the entire table at once might be better, or at least doing the frame all at once. Like I stated earlier, I'm using dowel rods to reinforce each glue joint, so I'm inserting dowels into the holes to be glued up. Sometimes I use a hammer to persuade them. The glue can create a seal that traps air in the holes, making the dowel not want to go all the way in sometimes, and that's where the hammer helps. Like I said previously, I like the aesthetics of the dowels in the joints, and before I applied the stain, I thought they looked good enough. But when I applied the stain, you'll see later in this video, they became less noticeable. If I were to do this table again, I might choose different woods or a lighter stain to make the dowels more apparent. And since I only have 2 clamps long enough to reach lengthwise on this table, I'm gluing up one side first, then letting it dry for a few hours. And then I will glue up the second side and transfer the clamps over to the other side. This method worked well for me. If you look closely, one of the bar clamps has an extension on it. I actually didn't have 2 clamps long enough before I started this build. Luckily, I had a spare bar with an extender laying around to make the clamp long enough. If I were to make this table again, or anything near its size, I would first make sure that I have enough clamps beforehand. I'm using my Japanese pole saw to cut the rest of the dowel rods off. This allows for a flush cut that requires very little sanding. As you can see, it makes quick work of cutting the dowel rods off. One problem I ran into from my lack of clamps was the shelves. Ideally, I would have either done all the shelves at once and used 8 clamps, or possibly done them when I glued the entire frame together. Having only 2 clamps capable of spanning the entire width gave me a few problems. I did manage to get 2 clamps that were too short to clamp to another clamp that was attached to the middle of the shelf as a clamping surface for the other clamps to grab onto. This allowed 3 points of clamping pressure on the shelf where 4 would have been ideal, but I did get it to work. Unfortunately, my footage was lost because of space being full on my phone, which is what I'm recording the video on. Here I'm applying the stain, and for the entire frame and shelves I used less than that small can of stain right there. This doesn't show me staining the bottom of the shelves or the missed spots from the initial staining. I did do those things after this stain had dried a little, but I imagine you already are bored of seeing me stain this entire table. You should just be glad I didn't record myself applying the finish to the frame also. It would have been the same as the staining footage which you're watching now, except instead of getting more brown, the frame would have been getting a little bit more shinier. I did make the finish myself though, which is a beeswax mineral oil finish. It's totally natural and safe for contacting food, but since most food contact would happen on the tabletop usually, this is just precautionary. I made the polish finish by mixing some beeswax sourced from a local bee farm and some food-grade mineral oil. It smells slightly of honey, making it very pleasant to apply compared to other finishes I could have used. Here I am, just cutting some furniture pads to fit on the feet, allowing the table to slide easily and still be stable. Each foot is using about 1 1/3 of a pad, and I wanted the entire foot to have a pad across it to increase surface area on the ground. To mount the tabletop to the frame would make for a table that was really heavy and hard to transport, since the top is a thick butcher block countertop. So I decided that making it 2 pieces would be better for transport. I am measuring, cutting, and drilling holes for screws in these pieces of wood, and they will eventually be screwed to the bottom side of the tabletop and fit snugly inside the frame, holding the top in place when placed on top. This allows for the table to still be very sturdy while also being able to fit in my car while taking it to my brother's house. These pieces of wood are actually the pieces I ripped off when I was making the legs to their correct width. They worked perfectly for being long enough and not too wide to make it awkward when attaching them. Using scraps from current projects or previous projects to do something is always a good idea, and it can save you money and time. One problem I had was that my screw gun wouldn't butt up close enough to the frame to allow me to drill these screws in, so I had to use my screwdriver and my hands. This is good for increasing forearm strength, and you can take my word for it. And if you don't take my word for it, how about you meet me at a brick wall and we'll see who can climb what? See? It looks cool, right? Finally, to finish the table, I'm using just food grade mineral oil. This is a perfect finish for a butcher block tabletop. It is food grade safe and it's recommended by the manufacturer of the butcher block. As you can see, the application is pretty simple. You just pour it on and wipe it around. Then you let it dry for about 15 minutes and wipe up any excess. After that, you have a tabletop that won't leach any chemicals into food, and it will protect the wood as well. It does have some maintenance, however, and should be reapplied occasionally. This is true for cutting boards as well, because they use the same finish. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, and be sure to watch one of my other projects.